Welcome to the Behind the Frame podcast, hosted by me, Rebecca Yale. I'm a destination wedding photographer and educator working in the luxury marketplace, and on this podcast, I'll be pulling back the curtain, sharing what goes on behind the scenes working in the luxury wedding industry. Hey friends, welcome back to the Behind the Frame podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to today's amazingly talented guest and fellow photographer, Sacia Matthews. Sacia Matthews is a destination wedding photographer and creative business consultant based in Charlotte, North Carolina. A former high school English teacher with a love for a good story, Sacia has crafted her business around a fine balance of artistry and storytelling. She was named one of the top wedding photographers in America by Brides, a Rangefinder magazine 30 Rising Star, and perhaps her most cherished accomplishment given to her by her husband, world's greatest mom. Known to be candid, a straight shooter, and perhaps even the funniest person you know, Sacia works with creatives all over the world in helping them to build businesses that are equal parts fulfilling, profitable, and led with artistry. Beyond her professional pursuits, she is a wife, mother of twin toddler boys, a proper girl's girl, and an avid Beyonce fan who will always say yes to happy hour as an excuse to continue celebrating life. Welcome to the pod. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I also will say I have had the honor of knowing you both professionally and personally. I was lucky enough to have you come out and shoot with me once, and you are just so incredibly talented and also just like a exactly as I just read, you are very funny and you just put everyone around you at ease, which is so important as a photographer. Yeah, you're like beam of happy energy. It's
Oh,
delightful to be around.
well, I love that. I am going to have to bank that. And because my husband is convinced that I am actually not the funniest person in the world. So I'm going to be like, well, Rebecca Yale said I'm really funny. So it's official.
I agree. And you are so just like good on your feet. We were working it was a very hot, difficult wedding together. There was a moment where I got really dehydrated and
You
wasn't feeling
did.
great and had to like go step and like chug my vitamin water, liquid IVs.
Uh-huh.
And you like didn't miss a beat and were incredible. You definitely put me at ease, which you shouldn't have to be
Good.
putting another photographer at ease. But we all deal with health stuff when I almost
Yeah,
swore. We all deal with health stuff when it comes, and that's why we have strong teams
that's right.
of wonderful people. But yes, my husband says I mean, I don't claim that I am the funniest person in the world because that's just not correct. But we do say that like we have to be on. Like before we started
Yeah.
this podcast, I went do do do,
Yep.
like get myself in the mode, and I do that before like consult calls too. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I joke that I'm professionally charming for a living. And he's like, you sure? And I'm like, well, not with you.
Right. Like, sorry, you don't get that side of me, okay?
No, I was like, you get when I get to I get to take the mask off and like just
Exactly.
wear my sweatpants.
Exactly.
Well, we have so much to talk about today. We are going to specifically talk about leveling up your business into the luxury market, establishing your voice both as an artist and as an authority and educator. But before we dive into all of that exciting stuff, I'd love to just start at the beginning and talk about how you got into wedding photography and how you started your business.
Yeah. So, like you read, I was a high school English teacher for about 5 or 6 years, and everything kind of came to a head. And I came home from work one day and I said, Rob, my husband, I said, I'm going to quit my job and I don't know what I'm going to do, but if you give me 6 months, I'll figure it out. And I don't know how, but he just immediately said yes. He's a better person than me, I always say. And he said, okay, figure it out. And so that's what I did.
He
And
believed in you. He
he
saw.
did. I
He
guess I
saw it.
picked the right person. But I went to a Barnes and Noble about that following Saturday, and I said, I am not leaving the Barnes and Nobles until I figure out what it is that I'm going to do. So I pulled out all of these different books on careers and changing paths and business education stuff. And I was like, I just got to figure this out. And I read through like 4 or 5 different books in that 6 hour window. And I finally said, well, I have a camera and I've been reading a lot about business today. I think I could start a photography business. And so that is literally how I picked getting into photography. And I just had no idea that I had no idea at the time I was going to get into weddings. I had no idea that my life was going to take the turns that it took, but I just had this like fearlessness because I knew I had to make something work because we had bills to pay. So that kind of started that journey. And now we're going into year 9 right now, which is really exciting. And it's turned into this wonderful world of weddings.
Congratulations. 9 years
Thank
is quite
you.
the accomplishment.
That's
So
right.
tell me, I know in my early years when I was me and my camera and had bills to pay, I
Yeah.
shot everything, like so many
Uh-huh.
babies in so many buckets. What were
Mhm.
some of those like first things that you started shooting?
Yeah, I started off with a lot of family work, and that pretty much carried me like probably the first 6 or 7 months until somebody tapped into me for a wedding. Their photographer had an emergency. They needed a last minute person. They knew I had never shot a wedding. They were like, we just need you to press buttons. And I was like, okay, I can put it. I put it in auto and I pressed a button. That is all I did. And I remember we got in the car after, and it was a destination wedding, ironically. And so we made like I charged them like $900 to do a destination wedding that was like 7 hours away from my house.
Oh
And
gosh.
we thought that we were like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this person just paid me like $1,000 and not knowing that no, like no, no, no.
You were actually working for below minimum wage. Yeah, we've all been
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. And I went and I shot the wedding and I got in the car. And mind you, again, I shot that entire wedding on auto and bless these people. They are still in our lives and we love them and appreciate them so much. And I have since given them extremely great photos. But I got in the car and I said, this is it. Like, this is the rush that I've been waiting to feel in my career. And I said, I'm going to make this work. Like, this is going to be my thing. That was pretty much it. And I just went immediately from families into weddings.
And what was it about weddings that felt like that spark? Because I think we all like we have to be a little crazy to work in weddings.
Oh,
Like
totally.
they are like what I feel like people from the outside are like, oh, weddings, like pretty bows and like
Oh, yeah.
champagne. And you're like, weddings are a high octane sport.
Yes.
Like they're not for the faint of heart, which my husband
No.
totally like he won't work weddings with me. He's like he'll do an elopement if like
Yeah.
he has to,
Yeah.
if I force him like during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But no, they are so intense.
They are.
So what was that little like click for you that you were like, yes, this is it?
Yeah. So when I was teaching, I was an English teacher. So, like you read in my bio, I love a good story, right? And what I loved about a good story for the English portion was the actual literal definition of a story. But when it came to teaching, what I loved about that was getting to know my kids on a deeper level and developing the curriculum around them that made sense for them, right? I couldn't do that though if I didn't take the time to like get to know my students. So at the beginning of the school year, I would do so much prep work before we would ever jump into the actual curriculum and just figuring out who these people are that are walking into my room, right? So I kind of approached the wedding the same way. I was like, okay, well, I don't like know a lot about the technical stuff, but I know a lot about people and I know a lot about figuring out what it is that people want out of whatever it is they're looking for. So I just used those skills that I had in the classroom to translate into getting to know this couple before I ever even knew that, like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But I just knew that, like, I needed to get to know these people and having those conversations prior to getting in front of them. So I walk in the room and I know who they are and I kind of know what they are drawn to and like what the story is and getting to know them. And then I was able to curb this experience for them, albeit I don't think that it was the same experience they would have gotten today. Um,
But I'm sure
but
they paid a little differently for it as well.
exactly. They got what they paid for, right?
They got more
But
than they paid for. They were lucky.
that's right. That's right. They were the first and they were lucky. But using that same kind of inspiration of getting to know just people, I love that I was still able to do that as a photographer. Um, and so that became kind of that driving force. I got in the car and I literally said, I feel like I'm a part of their story now. And I love feeling like I'm part of somebody's story, whether that's somebody I'm coaching or somebody I'm photographing or a friend. Like, I just want to be part of the story. I want to be a character. So that was that kind of just that excitement was what kind of drove me there.
I love that. I think that there's such an anthropological portion of what we do.
Yep.
I've always loved anthropology and I got really into it like 2018, 2019, like
Yeah.
did my deep dive into like Harari Sapiens and I was
I
like, oh,
love
like
that.
this is all like how our brain like I was my husband is like I very much am like gender is a construct, but
Yeah.
then like sometimes I'm like, oh, you really can't multitask. Like there is such
Yeah.
a difference between men and women in some things, not in all things, and it's
Yeah.
not categorically like I
Sure.
like put that out there. But yeah, man, like he cannot do two things at once and I
Yeah.
can't do one thing at a time. I'm like I need 12 things. I need all the juggle. I need,
Yes.
I need all the balls in the air and he's like
Yeah.
one ball. Um, so
Like, how
I
can you
love
do
yeah, I love the anthropological part of our job.
that?
There's I feel like I'm just going to talk about this on every episode. Sorry for everyone listening in, but it's such a great quote. I was talking about it with John Dolan
Uh-huh.
and someone else now who I can't remember, that there's an Albert Eisenstadt quote of it's more important to click with people than click the shutter. And
Mm,
I love that. I'm like,
love
yes,
that.
that is, I literally have it like hanging over there.
I
Like
love that.
that's everything. And that's such a big part of our job. And the like, I think we both come from similar approaches of like
Yep.
really being intentional. So like we do both care about lighting and composition and all of those things that we'll get into in a minute. But
Yep.
I always say to my clients that like none of that matters if you don't like the way you look in the photos, and that starts with you being comfortable in front of me.
You're
And I
spot
think
on.
yeah, I think that's something that I've been able to witness firsthand that you do extraordinarily well, which I love. Where we'll segue into what everyone has come here to hear about, which is that that not leap, but the because I don't like I think it's a misconception. We're all about breaking misconceptions here, and I think it's a
Sure.
misconception that it is a leap into luxury. It's not.
Yeah.
It is a slow and treacherous climb.
Very
um,
slow and very treacherous.
yeah, just no one sees it like some like
Yep.
you see the shiny parts, and
Mhm.
this is all about digging in. So you decided weddings were the place for you and
Mhm.
you started working in them. You started working with them, making less than minimum wage, as
Yep.
did I.
Yep.
My first year I shot three weddings. I think I gave away three weddings. Basically I
Yep.
lost money on all of them, but it
Yep.
was my portfolio and
Yep.
that's how I launched myself.
That's
So
right.
let's talk a little bit of like did you set your sights on like I want to work in the luxury market? Did you like what was the mindset of like okay, now I want to do weddings. What kind of weddings do I want to do? Like what was that first step
Yeah.
like?
Oh my gosh. I absolutely did not know that I wanted to shoot in the luxury market. In fact, looking back now, I had such a skewed and maybe even jaded look into what a luxury wedding even was. At the
Mm.
time, there was not even access to education around that. I mean, we're talking back, I mean, this for me was back in, gosh, maybe like 2014 or 2013, something like that. I mean, there
Yeah.
was just no real luxury wedding education even around. So my idea of what I thought was a luxury wedding was probably maybe a step above budget at the time, right? Like I had no idea
I
what
think
that.
mine was like like same at Barnes and Noble reading Town and Country magazine, which like doesn't
Yeah,
exist anymore with weddings.
yeah,
But it was literally I would look in like the back at the society pages and it was like, oh,
yeah,
this is luxury weddings.
yeah.
And
You don't
Martha.
you only know what you know, right? Like, and so for me, I thought at the time it was going to be the amount of weddings that I had that was more important than necessarily what I was shooting. So
Mm.
here I go out the gate. My first year, like after getting the first year I started like midway through the year. But then my first full year of being full time, I shot like 40 weddings, right? And
Oh, girl, you're back. My back.
hence, hence why I had back surgery in 2020, right? um, so, I shot 40 weddings and I'm arriving. Like, I am working my butt off. I am working so much. Like, oh my gosh, everybody wants me. Like, girl, you're doing weddings for like $5. Of course, everybody wants you. Like, you're a steal. And I just was hyper focused on that. And then finally it caught up to me and I was like, okay, like, whoa, I cannot do this long term. Like I can't even shoot at this point like 25 weddings full time the older I get, right? Like I've had to scale way, way down. And so finally, some education and people came into my life that kind of pulled the curtain back because I remember one time coming home from a wedding with my husband and I said, you know what? I think like if I can max out at like $10,000 for a wedding, like I will have really made it. And he was like, yeah, like 10K is a lot. Like he said, you would be a luxury photographer. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I think that that should be my goal. And then it was like this curtain got drawn back as we started being more transparent in this industry around one, what people were spending on weddings, two, like what does that really look like? And three, the education was geared more towards up leveling versus like just trying to speak to the mass market. And I was like, oh wow, like I'm so far off in my line of thinking, it's not even funny. But again, like you don't know what you don't know. And so once I started receiving that information and things became very transparent and accessible for me, then it became a matter of, okay, like what I actually need to do is back up and start thinking about who I want to be as an artist and who I want to serve. And then let that fuel everything else and every other decision that I make in this business to get closer and closer to that goal of the ideal client. It's not so much like the fact that I want to work in luxury weddings. It's really for me more about I just like working with really creative people who are thinking and talking and creating, collaborating differently than like the mass market. And so in order to get there, one, I have to keep refining, but then two, like those weddings are what I have to seek out. And so it just so happens that they're luxury weddings, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the exact same thing, that you build your career with longevity around
Yep.
intentionality,
Yep.
and with like there's the luxury market like sounds flashy and fun, but there's
Mhm.
a ton of package that comes with it. And
Yeah,
depending on how you structure your business, like you can make more money in the mass market,
sure.
depending on how many weddings you're shooting per year. If
Yep.
you're building a team, like there's so many ways to find
Yeah.
success. So it's about like, what does success mean for you? And I love what you're saying about the transparency and like what I mean, I remember when I thought 10,000 was like so much money to be charging as well.
Yeah,
And I will like the market has changed so much in the last few
absolutely.
years, that like when I was starting in like 2010, 2011,
Mhm.
a luxury wedding photographer, like the people at the top of our industry
Yeah,
were charging $10,000.
absolutely.
So like it's like, and now there's like those same people are starting at like 50,
Yeah,
$60,000. So like it has changed. Like I
yeah.
will put that out
Inflation
there
is
for
real.
anyone listening. Yeah, I mean it's not just inflation. I think like
Yeah,
what weddings are, I don't know if it's like, I feel like there's some like talk about anthropology, like we need to like go find some anthropologists to write a
yes,
paper on this.
yes,
Because they're really like, people are like, a luxury wedding used to be a few $100,000 and now it's a few million. And
yeah,
like, yes, those existed a little bit here and there, but it is so different than what it used to be, the expectations of what
yep.
goes into it. And yeah, that's the our
That's
little
another
cat.
episode for you.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode about like capitalism, broken capitalism,
Yeah,
and God,
that's the episode I
yeah.
want to listen to.
I have to be careful ranting on in public about my views.
That's right.
I will say that like, no matter what your views are, I'm very grateful that luxury weddings do exist.
Absolutely.
And like I always find it so funny when people say on social, like, what a waste, like people outside of the world of weddings, like what a waste of money. And I'm like, it's not at all. Like wedding and the wedding industry as a whole is supporting little businesses. So this is
Yes.
actually like the perfect like redistribution of wealth.
Yes. And I
This
actually
is
love when like the planners are like, if I'm ever looking at a budget breakdown or something, I love the planners who take the time to say like this wedding ended up employing X amount of people. You know, it
mhm.
could potentially be 40 to 100 plus people that are staffed because of this wedding.
More. I mean, those multi-million
Yeah,
dollar weekend weddings, like I've worked
yeah,
weddings where I think like 500 people touched it at some
yeah.
point. And I'm like, this is like a small city.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. It's incredible. So tell me, like, once you set your sights on that, and obviously, like, you set your intention,
Yeah.
what were like the net, like someone who's like, okay, I agree. Like, I want to create work that fulfills me artistically. I want to do all
Mhm.
these things. Like, what were those next steps that you took to really like start leveling up to those $10,000 and
Yeah. And
beyond
beyond.
clients?
Yeah.
Well beyond.
Yeah, that's right. More. Um, so that's a really great question. So I want to backtrack a little bit. One, I definitely knew that I could not sustain my life and the life that I wanted for myself and my family with how I was working. That definitely drove the decision into starting to, trend with that up level and get into luxury weddings and work. What really happened, I love telling this story, is I got pregnant in 2020 and had my kids in 2021, and I had them in
Oh, was
August.
that a stressful time to be pregnant?
Oh, it
What was something
wasn't,
happening in the world?
it was a breeze. We were isolated and it was great. Um, so I had them in August 2021, and I had my first wedding back in October of 2021. And as I'm
That's
driving to the
quick.
wedding, yeah. And as I'm driving to the wedding, I start sobbing. And every time I tell this story, all the like parents in the room go, "Oh," because they're like, "You were sad because you had to leave your babies at home." And I'm like, "No, that is actually not why I was crying. I was excited to go to work because when you have been
Hell
home
yeah.
with little kids, like a wedding was exciting to me." I was like, "Oh my God, I get to have a Coke and a vendor meal and a hot meal. Like, this is great."
That I don't have to cook myself.
Yeah, like this is a dream.
No
Um,
screaming babies while I'm trying to eat.
like, oh, I was literally so excited. So I got there to the venue and I'm still boohooing, and my husband's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I feel like I could close my eyes and just walk in here and just do this. Like, I would have to put no thought, no real structure to this. I could just do it." And I said, "And I feel like that sucks that I'm leaving my family to just go show up and be a robot. Like, if I'm
Mm.
actually going to do this, I want to be deeply invested in my creative process, and like, not that I wasn't producing work that I was proud of, but like real true artistic work that speaks to me, that speaks to this couple, and is more than just the same old flow posing shots that I would always do for every couple, right? Like, how is that actually telling their story?" And so he was like, "Okay, well, you have fun unpacking that in therapy. I cannot help with that."
Love it.
But I went home, and again, I always preface this with, I'm not saying that anybody should do this, but for me, I am the kind of person where if I'm going to do something, I just have to go get my hands dirty and get in there and just do it. And so I decided to just kind of go scorched earth on everything that I was currently doing. So that included, like, I archived my entire Instagram for a while. Put up a landing page on my website. Like, I took down everything because I said, I don't actually know who I need to speak to in this next process. Like, I knew that I was getting ready to go to a new level in my business and in my work. And I didn't want anything floating out there yet that wasn't representative of who I was as an artist. So I went score shares and all that. And I first said, let me start with doing the work of figuring out me. Like, who am I? What do I want? What am I good at? Where do I need support? Whether that's bringing in a team member that's better at that than me, or what layers of support do I actually need in my life right now? And how can I refine my process to speak to that luxury client? I knew that's where I needed to head and where I wanted to head, not just for financial reasons, but like I said, I wanted to work with people who were deeply involved in their own artistic process. Um, and so I started with the work of me, and that took some time and some honesty, some brutal honesty about where I was and where I was going and what baggage I was bringing into my business and all of the things. And from there, I said, okay, I got me. I know who I am and like what I bring to the table. Now, how do I connect that with that client and with the creative partners that I want to work with? So that kind of started that whole process of figuring out, well, these are the type of people that I want to work with. These are people that I think I may not be able to work with them today because I don't have the processes in place today to show up for them and their clients, but I can get there, or I want to get there. And I started with building that list. I started with following their habits. Like, how do they treat their clients? How are they interacting with their clients? What's their artistic process? Like, introducing myself when it was appropriate, or, and from there it was like, okay, now I need to start being in the room with these people. Now I need to start being in the room with my potential clients, and like figuring out what luxury actually is. And what I realized is it wasn't really a price point, it's just an experience, right? And so I wanted to be well versed. I made my husband start, hey, if we're going somewhere, like, let's try to stay at this kind of property, not because we wanted to post it on social media, but because I wanted to use that as time to do market research. What's different about staying at a Belmont property versus just staying at a Hyatt, right? Two hotels, they get the job done, but the experiences are just night and day difference. And when, I grew up very middle class. Um, and I didn't have like a ton of those luxury experiences that I could just naturally pull to. So I had to get out there and just get my hands dirty and invest and do the work. And so all of that kind of culminated into me figuring out what I wanted my experience and my artistic process to be. And that is how I kind of started to make those jumps into the luxury market.
I love that. I think looking in the service hospitality and industry in general is so important for us
Yeah.
that like I'll sometimes even like I'll say to people I work in hospitality and they'll be like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm a photographer. I shoot weddings." And they're like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it
Yeah.
is
It's spot
like
on.
yeah, every and so many of the wedding planners that I work with who have built their businesses and become really successful started in hospitality at either a restaurant or a hotel because it really is about serving your client. It's about
Yeah.
problem, especially gosh, at the luxury level, it is about problem solving and like
Yes.
problem solving in those high octane
In the
situations.
most
Well,
efficient way possible, because you are managing so many different emotions and things going on.
yes. And as we said, like never letting them see you sweat while
Yep.
realizing that we're human. I love like what you said about outsourcing and realizing what you were good at and what you're bad at. I think
Yep.
that's a mistake that I see so many people and made myself as well. Like I lump myself in with that
Yeah.
of feeling. And I think especially like again, like don't want to like go too down the rabbit hole of like women versus men,
Yeah.
but I do think that just like society, what they put on women is this feeling and like fear of failure where
Yep.
we're not
100.
like boys are allowed to mess up and
Yep.
learn, women aren't. Like we
Yeah.
need, I've listened to a lot of TED Talks about this.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
have to like always have this facade of perfection. So it
Yeah.
can feel really hard. Like I remember earlier in my career, if I missed a shot, or I asked my second shooter to get a shot and they couldn't and they told me and I then forgot because I'm
Yeah.
doing a million things and I was like, "Oh no, like that is my
It's
failure."
crushing.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, okay. What I need is just to create the infrastructure behind this. I need to realize that if a planner, if a second shooter, if someone I said whatever, if someone tells me something and I'm in the middle doing something else, as good as I am at multitasking, I'm already multitasking with 10 things. So I actually need an assistant who is going to write down, oh, we need to get that, or we missed this,
Yep.
or whatever it is. And I need to have a strong team with me. So, I mean, obviously, we're all trying to prepare ourselves as best for every wedding as possible. But
Yeah.
like I said earlier, we worked one together where it was like 110 degrees, like
Yeah.
no shade. And I chugged my electrolytes this morning, but I wasn't feeling well. And there was no doubt in my mind that when I had to take a step away and like hydrate and make sure I wasn't going to faint,
Yeah.
that my clients were in good hands, that I
Yep.
had a strong, capable team. Like if I had been like knock on wood, if I had been
Yeah.
hit by a bus the night before that wedding and you had to take it over, like
Yes. You need.
I knew that the people that I was surrounding myself with were well trained and
Yeah.
caliber to serve. And
Yes.
I think that's something that like I hear sometimes photographers say like with pride that like, oh, I'm working a $2 million wedding alone. And I'm like, what? What
There's no
happens if you
way.
trip and fall on your face?
Yeah.
Um, is
It's a
that just me?
disservice to your client.
Am I the only one who trips and falls on my face? Like I'm
Yeah.
careful, but yeah, I think it's okay to say like, hey, I can't do everything. I'm not superhuman, but
Yeah.
I'm smart and I
Yeah.
can figure out this back end.
Listen, you are spot on. I just taught a class about this recently, and where I said, you have to build a team that also just can fill in the gaps for you. Like you said, you're not superhuman. Like, you're not going to excel in every single portion of the day, 100% of the time, all the time, whether that means because you got overheated and you need to take a step back, or maybe you're weaker at something. It doesn't make you a bad photographer. I said, like, for example, even with myself, I know this is like so super controversial, but I don't shine with taking formal family portraits. It's just not my thing. I realized that about me. I'm really good at the candid side of that. I'm not good with the formal stuff. I don't know what it is. I hate just standing there calling names. Like, it's just not for me. So what did I do? Well, I didn't just like stop taking them. I just made sure that anybody that I bring on my team absolutely has to be a strong family relator person, like, because that is going to be their job. They are going to get the safe stuff and I'm going to get the in between. In the last year, I switched this model. And of course, at this point, I'm using like pretty much consistently the same people, which is really nice. So they know me, they know what I'm looking for, they know what I need. But being able to relinquish that stress for me has freed my creative brain up to do things that I want to do during that time and not have to feel like a micromanager of that person. But I can't do that if I'm just finding random people to work for me and I have no idea who they are and I'm not talking to them until 30 minutes before the wedding day shows up. Like, I can't operate like that at this level, right?
Absolutely.
So part of you being getting to that next level too is you treating this like you are a real manager of a team. Like, you really do have to pull the right people into your team to fill in the gaps, to be that security, and to just be basically another you on the wedding day.
Absolutely, especially some of these bigger productions, you literally can't be in two places at once.
Yeah.
Or you like I had an event last year where I it was like multiple 16-hour days in a row. Like we were starting with activities that were like 7 a.m. and we were going to like 2 a.m. So like we were in shifts. Like we
Yeah.
had to. Like that was
Yeah.
the only way that
Yeah.
we
No
could get
choice.
through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had to work in shifts and like I'm leaving well this will air once I'm back, but
Yeah.
I'm leaving in a couple days for a big wedding in Dubai, and
Love.
the structure of the day, like I can't shoot the ceremony details myself, so
Yeah.
I have like as you said that you try to work with the same people. That is so lovely, and I try to do the same.
Yeah. It's
I will
hard.
say it's so hard, and I will say that so many of because I have very high standards in who I
Yeah.
work with. I work mostly with either current or former of my 201 students or
Yep.
mentees in some way because I'm like, oh, I've already trained you. Like this is like
Exactly.
it's
Like,
a
you
little
know what to do.
selfish. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like you've read all my
Oh,
stuff. Like you know
smart.
exactly what I want.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like you, they then get too busy and can't
And
work
then
with
they can't
me.
come. Yes, I hate that.
Yeah.
I love it, but I hate it.
Yeah, you were supposed to do another wedding with me like a few months after that other one, and we're so like very professional and very. And I don't begrudge you at all. You were like, "Is it
Yes.
okay? I have my own booking," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, I'm sad, but like happy for you."
Right.
Oh, which I always am. Like I'm never gonna begrudge like unless you cancel on me like a week
The
out.
day
Like then
before.
I'm
Yeah.
yeah, then I'm gonna be like, what?"
Right.
Um, then I get upset. But no, I never begrudge my former seconds for doing well and
That's
leaving
right.
me because they're too busy. It's fair. But I'm the team that I'm bringing with me to Dubai are former
Yeah.
mentees that
You
I've
can
worked
trust
with.
them.
Yeah, because I do. I need like I details are hugely important to me, and
Yeah.
I am not going to be able to shoot a single ceremony detail. That is, and it's a huge build out.
Yeah.
And the wedding is NDA, so the only thing I'm allowed to show is the details. So like those photos better be
Like, you
good.
gotta nail
Um,
them.
yeah, so knowing that I can trust that person and making sure that we're like having that little sit down before of what's
Yep.
your responsibility, what's mine, and
Yep.
breaking that down. So I know you touched on that you just taught a class yourself. I think that's another thing that people listening in are thinking about of like becoming this authority and voice. So tell me a little bit of how, I mean, I know you started in education, so it's
Yeah,
funny. I feel like it always kind of happens that way. I myself thought I might end up like before I was like, no, I have to take photos myself. I
yeah,
thought I'd be like, I wanted to be like Sontag. I wanted to write
yeah.
about photography and I wanted to teach. I was going to get my master's and then I was like, maybe I like that down the road. And then yeah, never looked back. But I'm so glad that I get to teach without having to have gotten my master's.
Honestly, yes. And I was about to say the class that you teach, I mean, I've done both now, and I'm like, they do feel like every time I leave a review somewhere or somebody asks me, I'm like, this is literally like a college course. Like, you can't play around with this stuff. Like, it's real deal stuff. So, yeah, it's funny that
Thank
you've
you.
circled back to that now.
So I'd love to hear like how you like what spread did you miss teaching? Like what I know you said, which like I think we have very similar hearts of like just being really excited about like being part of other people's stories and like
Yep.
getting to lift other people up. Yeah, I feel like my mother really modeled that for me, where she was the third female attorney at her firm,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was yeah, like so. I mean, it might have been in California at her
Uh-huh.
firm, but I mean, it would like shit was crazy
Yeah.
in the late 70s.
I love
So
her.
yeah, so she helped so many other women and men as well, but like
Yeah.
she was always looking out for the other women in her firm,
Yeah.
making sure that because it's so hard when you are like you're not given the seat at the table that so many
Yep.
others are.
Yep.
So that was very important to her, and I watched that and had that modeled, and it became important to me. I'd love to hear what drove you back into because like you are training your competition in a little way, which people say that to me all
Yeah.
the time, and I'm like, good for them. Like
Yeah.
if a student, I've had students beat me out for weddings, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but good for them.
Yeah.
So
You
tell
know,
me about
it's
that part of your journey.
Yeah, well, yeah, similar to you, when I left teaching, a lot of people were like, "Oh, yeah, the kids drove you away." And I was like, "No, I freaking love the kids. It was the adults that were driving me crazy." Like the kids were great in
Kids
comparison.
are pure of heart. Adults are the corrupt ones.
Exactly. Like they don't know what they're doing. The adults are just right. So when I left, I knew that I was going to miss having those impactful relationships. Like I was the teacher that constantly had kids in her room, and I never had a empty lunch period because there were kids, we were talking, we were reading, we were sharing stories, like whatever, right? So I knew that I was going to miss that, and I did. In fact, when it was the peak of the pandemic, I remember saying like, well, I miss this so much and I feel like I could be so useful. Should I consider like going back part-time for teaching, especially like because things were financially a little shaky in 2020. I was like, maybe I should pick up a part-time teaching job. Um, and I was quickly reminded of why I left in the first place. So I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. But maybe what I can do is start to infuse my way into education. And at the time, I struggled with a lot of that imposter syndrome of like, am I good enough? Even like good enough in my career to teach somebody. And I just remember when I started in this industry, I didn't see very many people who looked like me teaching these courses who had even a similar background to me as they were starting this journey in photography. And I was like, you know what? I think that I can help somebody, that I can be a voice. I have the training. I have a master's in education. Like I actually know how to teach. And so when I say that Rebecca's course is amazing, you can trust my opinion because I actually know what good teaching and bad teaching looks like. And so I just knew that I felt like I could build a place for me. I didn't know if the place existed already, but I knew if it didn't, I could build that. And I wanted to just be a support. My favorite part about teaching was the light bulb moments, like seeing my kids like light up when they got it or something made sense or a connection. Like you could see the neurons firing on kids. It's intoxicating when you love teaching. And I get to feel the same energy now with the adults that I teach. Like when I see them be like, oh my God, I never thought about doing that, or that's so smart. Why didn't I do it? And it's not for the ego boost. It's totally because I'm like, you're about to change your life. Like, this is about to do something amazing in your business. And like, it's fun to be able to be part of that story and be able to watch them kind of take off.
Absolutely. I think I mean, there is the ego boost, but it's also like you got to put your ego aside a little and
Yep.
like humble yourself in
Yep.
teaching. And gosh, when I was building the 201 course, which like for similar
Mhm.
during the pandemic, like it was
Yeah.
rough times.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's pivot. And like I'd always wanted to create this college level course
Yeah.
for wedding photographers who hadn't gotten to have the opportunity to have that art school education. I was
Yep.
like, I want to provide it in a way that empowers people to create not my kind of art, but their best kind of art. And
Exactly.
I basically like my husband, then boyfriend at the time, was like constantly reminding, like he'd like drag me away from the computer, forcing me to go on a walk, be like, "You need
Uh-huh.
fresh air. Let's do this."
Yeah.
Um, and I would just be like sobbing because like I was like so exhausted.
Yeah.
I just like stopped sleeping while I was creating this. My friend who gave birth similarly timed to you
Uh-huh.
was like, "You kind of birthed your own baby
You
of this
did.
course."
You
um
did.
and yeah, we'll see when I'm not pregnant yet, but like we're gonna start family planning soon, so we'll say
Yeah.
I feel like that's gonna hurt more, but the sleepless nights will probably be about the same.
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
I remember just like being so exhausted and like why am I doing this? And then you get like the email from someone who is like this, and I feel like you were, because you were one of my auditors of the
Yep.
course, like you helped me,
Yep.
and I'm very grateful for that. But when people would say like, oh, this clicked for me, or like, gosh, sometimes I'll like get people who are like, I put a down payment on my house and like didn't think I'd be able to do that. Like I
Yeah.
was especially like, and again, like I love helping men too. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm being so, and I love helping anyone. But gosh, when a woman says to me, like, I thought that I was like the stay-at-home mom and this was a side hustle to bring
Yep.
in some extra, and like now I'm the primary breadwinner, like,
It's
oh man,
amazing.
does nothing make me feel happier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stick it to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And again, like gender is a construct, but we do
That's
have
right.
constructs put on us
That's
by
right.
society. So I love pushing back on that and
Oh, yeah.
making sure that we are telling people of all stripes that like they can do exactly what they want. And as you said, just pulling back that curtain that
Yeah.
so many people don't understand what exists. I love that you said like I'm trying out these nice hotels and stuff, which like, hey, expensing a Belmont, here for it.
I mean, listen, there's worse things that could be happening.
Right. But I think John Dolan might have been the one to say this to me years ago, of like the idea that you're not your client always.
Yep.
And we need to remind ourselves that we are judged on things that have nothing to do with our photography.
That's
And
right.
I have a certification process now as part of 201, and I was just going through someone's website and their work is gorgeous, and they have a model there that on the front of their website who was absolutely gorgeous,
Yeah.
and I understood like why they wanted her there, but
Hmm.
her styling, like the makeup choices and the hair choices, like just
Yeah.
weren't hitting the luxury client that they want to be
Yeah.
hitting now. And I like felt like heartbreaking, and I was like, I understand why you have this, and like I get what you're trying to do, but it's not actually hitting what you want. And you
Yep.
have to, yeah, you really have to like try to put yourself in that ideal client
Yeah.
mindset.
Yes, and it's tough. I mean, because you are not your ideal client, you really you can be taking a flyer if you're just trying to pull all this information out for your brain. And I just couldn't do it. I was hitting walls and getting very frustrated. I was looking at what other people were doing, like other artists, and I'm like, okay, but like that's not going to help me long term. Like that's just what's working for them. Like if I'm going to really figure this out, then need to really immerse myself into this. And so I am just such a fan of like going and experiencing this for yourself firsthand. So then the way that you are made to be felt, like you'll want that same magical feeling for your client. And so it was so helpful.
Well, speaking of intentionality and pulling back the curtain, I would love to step into the most beautiful photo that you can view here if you are driving or listening to this while you're editing. If you're watching on YouTube, you can view it here. If not, it is linked to in the show notes. I absolutely love this image that you sent over. I want to let you describe it before I jump in with my thoughts because I'd love to hear directly from the artist.
So this is a photo of a couple, and we're in New York City, and there's, of course, traffic and whatnot going by, and we just happened to get this very perfectly timed yellow cab, which is like iconic New York yellow cab, right? And was able to see the couple through the window of the cab, if that makes sense. So the windows down on both sides, and I was able to see straight through to the couple who was standing across the street.
You are so perfectly framed. And I love that you said, I love and I hate, I love for the purpose of this conversation that you said we were lucky because there's no such thing as luck.
That's
Luck
right. That's
is
true.
opportunity meeting preparation. And
That's right.
I know what went into this image because we've already chatted about it. So
Yes.
you share with the group how this wasn't luck and this was your hard work.
That's right. That is very true. I'm really glad you helped reframe that. So, every year I like to do like something that is fun shooting wise for me. Like, I don't really have the time to go to workshops and things like that at this point. But my friend Molly McCauley, who runs
Love
Make
her.
workshops, yes, I love Molly so much. She is one of my good friends now, and I adore her. If you're listening, go check her out. And she runs a workshop every year in New York, and it's the only workshop I go to year over year because I just love being around her and hearing her talk. And she just I just always have a good time. A lot of times I don't even shoot. Sometimes I won't even edit what I took there. It just is worth it to just be around other creatives who think differently, but that I still respect. And I always leave just feeling really fulfilled. So I went to Molly's workshop, but before I went, I did say, okay, New York is one of my newer markets that I'm introducing into my brand. And I knew that I needed to get something that felt like just an iconic New York shot. I'm really drawn by colors, and movement is really an important inspiration for me. And so I knew in advance before going, I made a shot list of not like, I'm going to take this photo, this photo, this photo, just things that I was inspired by that I wanted to like just pull attention in my brain. I just wanted I didn't have this on me or anything. It just in the back of my brain, these are the things that I'm kind of looking for. Okay,
Like a
cool.
mood board shot list.
Exactly, like a mood board shot list. And so I had a picture of a cab in this mood board shot list that I created. And I didn't really know that like that was the vibe that we were going for. I just knew I wanted a moment with a cab in some way. So we put that into the universe. I'm like, we're going to get this done. We go to the workshop. This is like probably, if it wasn't the last shot, it was like one of the last 4 or 5 shots that I took that day. And the couple was across the street, and we were actually doing like walking shots and moving shots and stuff like that. And then Molly was helping to teach some of the other attendees about using like motion blur and like how to use it without it being like cheesy or like not intentional.
The
And so
blur
while
on purr.
exactly. Exactly. And so while she was kind of going over that and people were playing with that, she happened to call to attention. She's like, "Oh, there's a yellow cab coming. Like, how cute if you can catch that." And I was like, "This is it. This is showtime. Like, this is the moment. I've been waiting." I mean, it's crazy that that was the first cab we even saw like all day. I mean, I'm sure there were cabs and we just didn't notice it, but like the first one that I had been called to attention all day. At the very end of the day, I'm exhausted. I'm ready to go. Um, and the cab comes through, and I'm like, just go. Like, let's just shoot. Let's just go and see what we get. And I actually got 2 shots. I got one shot of the couple in the frame, but then the other shot I got was of just their hands. And I actually personally love that shot, but Rob said it was creepy and ghost-like, and so I couldn't like unsee it once he said it. So I was like, okay, well, thankfully we have the shot that we can use. But it's just like this very perfectly placed yellow cab, and the couple is there, and they're like the composition is great, and there's movement, which is such a big inspiration of mine, and it just all worked. But you're right, it was that prep on the front end of like knowing myself and knowing what inspires me, knowing what kind of drives my creative decisions in my business, and then being able to nail that shot. It was magical.
Well, and I love how you spoke of like refilling your cup at experiences like this. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important and such a piece that's missing from so many photographers
Mhm.
where I'll get asked a lot, like, do you bring shot lists with you to wedding days?
Yeah,
Like what is that like? How do you remember all this stuff? And I always say like wedding days, like I am not an athlete, but wedding days are the big game. Like this is my
that's
sport.
right.
This is every wedding is my Super Bowl.
That's right. You're right.
And you have to be in muscle memory. So you need to learn these skills outside of wedding days, and you
Yep.
need to find ways to fill your cup outside of wedding days. So you figure out what fills your cup and then you bring that energy into the wedding day. And
100%.
I like this image, or like it looks and feels like you. Like if I had been sent this by someone else, I would wonder if it was yours.
Yeah.
And that's, I know you're working still on getting your new website up, which by the
Yeah.
time of this episode, it should be up and live, and people can go check it out in the show notes. We'll talk about all that at the end, but if you're listening in, just on the bottom of the episode, you can click and see her website and her Instagram and check out all of her beautiful work. And we will have a link to this specific image. But that's the goal of any artist, is to have your work. And I love like what you said. I feel like we first started chatting, I think in 2020,
Yeah.
on Instagram,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't have said like this looks totally like your work then. But
No.
now here we are 4 years later, and absolutely I'm like, oh yeah, this is your image.
Yeah.
So I think you've done such a beautiful job of connecting that. And now you're
Thank-
teaching that. So I'd love for
Yeah.
you to share a little bit. I'm skipping, I usually ask people now to like pull back the curtain more on what's happening behind the scenes, which I definitely like don't want to miss, because I feel like you're going to have some good stories for
Yeah.
us of, I always say that like people don't want to see how the sausage is made, but when it comes to this podcast, we want to see how the sausage is made.
That's right.
But we're going to put a pin in that for a sec and go into what you're teaching now to people. What, like, tell me about the Artistry Reset. I love that name, and how you're helping other creatives fill up their own cups.
Yeah, so the artistry reset is like my new baby that is taking all my time and attention right now, but it is a group coaching program. Right now, we're just going to run it once a quarter because it's like very intense. But we're hoping to at some point do it every other month. It is open to 10 to 15 students, so it has a very intimate feel. And we meet once a week over a Zoom call, and they're all recorded, so you don't have to be live. But we just talk about, we go through the process of basically everything that I went through back in 2019 and 2020, of doing that unpacking work of who we are, moving into how to get our processes and business creative decisions aligned. We talk about, each week is all based though and rooted in artistry. So week one is about defining artistry. What does that actually mean? Like, because it kind of is becoming a little bit of a buzzword. So what does it mean? And what does it mean to work and live with intention? The second week, we talk about how to discover your artistry. And that's where we get like real personal, real vulnerable, and kind of talk about how do we get to a place of working in our business through artistry. The third week is about the business of artistry, and that's where we talk about pricing. That's where we talk about being profitable. That's where we talk about how to merge making art, but then also still being marketable, and having real conversations about social media and relationship building and all of those things. And then the fourth week, we talk about leading and dreaming with artistry. So, how do we become thought leaders in our field so that we remain innovative and we can remain relevant and we can still remain true to who we are? And so, combined with all of those topics, we have weekly homework assignments that everybody has to turn in and do. We have discussion together. There's been like real friendships and relationships that are formed. You get access to me for the month. So, if you need me to put eyes on a website, or if you need me to, we can go through galleries together. Like, you just really have this person who is invested in you for the month. And it really does feel like a class setting. Like, all the people that were on this last month was the first month we ran it. And all of them were like, it really felt like I was in college or in high school again. And like, you were my favorite teacher. And like, I got to build this relationship with you. And that just like, that was everything. So that's the artistry reset. That is my baby. That's like the signature offer right now. Um, and yeah, we'd love to have anybody who's interested in learning more about it.
That is so exciting. I love that you're putting artistry first because
Yeah,
that I like I preach the same thing. And
100%.
I think that like I hear all the time. So I'm gonna sell you for a sec that if anyone is like, is my artistry really important? Like I want business. Like I want to know how to charge 10,000. Like 10,000 still sounds like a luxury number to me, and I want to be charging that, or I want to be charging 8,000, 5,000, whatever it is. Like I'm stuck. Like I have some people come to me and they're like, I'm charging 1,000. Like 5,000 would be incredible.
Yeah,
Like people are coming from all walks of life. And I just had my 201 launch, and I'll have people be like, "Oh, can I just get the pricing calculator? Can I just get this? Can I just get that piece? I don't need the rest." And I'm like, "No, you cannot." And like, sure, there's other educators out there that like might offer things, and that's fine if that works
sure.
for them. But that's not what works for me, and that's not what works for my mindset. And I feel like you and I are so similar in that the artistry is the base. That if
Yep.
you don't have that, it's if like let's say we're Apple, and I think this is literally part of 201, that like let's say you are Apple, the first step, you're not just going to go out and start selling a new product. You are going to
Yeah.
have R&D, research and development. Our
Yep.
R&D is our artistry. It is
Yeah.
what we have to sell. So if you are not spending the time tooling it and working it in that fashion, then you're putting the cart before the horse, and you're going to go out there and start trying to sell and start trying to get this higher price, and like maybe you'll get a couple clients, like if you're lucky,
Yeah.
but that's not going to be sustainable, and you are eventually going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be in above your head and you're going to end
Yep.
up in trouble. So
Spot on.
you have to start with that foundation.
Yeah. And I tell them too, my students, I'm like, listen, honestly, most people have pretty pictures at this point, right? Like we all can take a decent, pretty photo, but this new generation of people who are buying are really curious in how they can really immerse and see themselves in your work. And that to me is the mark of a real artist is can you actually make somebody feel immersed into the story of a photo? Is it more than just pretty? Um, and so we really kind of get into that. And yeah, it just pretty photos will get you in the door, but will it keep you there? Probably not. So let's just do the work now so that you can stay and keep climbing the ladder.
Yeah, that's what I say to people all the time, even like potential clients, that like you don't realize issues in someone's photo until it's you in it. Like
That's
you like
right.
that's my first course was More Than Pretty Tones
Mhm.
because of this phenomenon. Especially I think like now we've kind of shifted in what our top line kind of
Sure.
aesthetic is in
Yeah.
luxury weddings right now. But for so long with the fine art aesthetic, people had pretty tones, but the couple look like they hate each other. Like I talk the photo of the couple looking in opposite directions. I call that
Yes.
looking for the ones who got away.
Yeah.
Or all these other like uncanny valley, like weird
Yeah.
hand placement where I'm like, oh, did
Uh-huh.
the bride drop Molly? Like that's a
Yeah.
look.
Yeah.
It's not the look I want. And
Yeah.
brides a lot of times don't realize it until it's their wedding day and they're like, wait, why is my husband's neck at this super awkward angle? Why do we look like we're on, like why are my shoulders up here? And like then it's
Yep.
too late. And that's how like I used to get really like pissy about this and be like, why are there these photographers who are like on best of lists and things that like
Yeah.
have these photos, and like some of those photographers aren't still working. Like it
Yeah.
catches up to you
It does.
no
At some
matter.
point, it knocks on your door.
Yeah, like you need to be prioritizing your artistry and
Yeah.
creating the best work possible.
Yes.
And now I wanna go back a little because I was like, I'm gonna skip over this because I was excited to hear about your artistry
Yeah.
retreat, which sounds absolutely incredible for students listening
Thank
in.
you.
You should be bookmarking this if this is coming out after enrollment for the current quarter. It sounds like you're gonna have opportunities in future quarters, and this sounds like what an incredible opportunity to have that level of interaction and
Yeah.
feedback. So make sure it's linked in your show notes. Make sure you're checking it out. But let's talk a little bit about like these shiny facades that we feel like we need to put on, um, for ourselves, for our clients, for fellow people in the industry, and what's actually happening behind the scenes. So I'd love to hear like some stories, if you've got any to share, of times that were harder in your business, and what you did to get past them.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I feel like a more recent would be going through what I like to call the period of no's, right? Like, I made all these shifts. I did all that work over the last couple of years. Um, I raised my prices. I started making the relationships, the inquiries were coming in, like qualified leads and everything. But I was going through a very tough period of no. And it's rough. I'm privileged in that I am not responsible for our household financially. But I do contribute a significant portion to our household and an important part to our household. And I was starting to get scared, like, well, maybe it's I'm not actually as good as I think I am. B, maybe I went too high on the price, or and C, like, what do I do if all of this dries up? Am I gonna have to shut my business down? And those are all very like real and valid thoughts to have as a small business owner in general. And so it took probably like 6 months to break that spell. But what I decided to do was, instead of just like wallowing in the, well, why is nobody booking me? And like, this sucks. And like, what am I going to do? Do I need to close up shop? Instead of like staying in that mindset, I decided I'm just going to do the work. Every day I'm going to do something to just keep trying to move the needle, to keep trying to make the relationship, to keep refining the process so that when the opportunity shows up at my door, I'm ready to go. Like, here's here's my bank account. Please give me the money because I am ready to do the job, right? And so I stayed the course. And I think it's really hard for people because we're so used to like this instant gratification now. It's really hard to like stay the course. And that was a really big learning lesson for me. And when you stay the course, magic will happen. I stayed the course for 6 months. I worked on me. I refined. I got everything lined up. And then, boom, at the 6 month mark, opportunity knocked on my door. I was ready to go. And I got my $20,000 check. And I was very happy girl, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
And
you. But you just have to stay the course. And we talk a lot about that in the artistry reset about what to do in that zone of no, because just because you go out and you do all these things doesn't mean that the next day, you press live on your new website, you press live on your new proposal, whatever. It doesn't mean that it's going to pay off right then, but it's about the seeds that you're planting. And then how do you water and nurture those seeds in the meantime so that they can bloom. And so a lot of my work right now is planting seeds and just waiting for them to bloom and nurturing them in the in between.
yeah, I think that is so beautifully said. And I like started to get emotional listening because I've dealt with the same. Like I've gone through so many phases of no's, where, and sometimes I'm like, it's people are saying no to me and I'm saying no to people, which that is
Exactly.
terrifying to like
Yeah.
be turning away business that you know isn't going to serve you.
Yep.
And also being told no by
Yeah.
others. And it's especially like, do you mind sharing what your target like number of like how many weddings do you want to be doing a year? Do
Yeah.
you
This year we're aiming for 10 or less. So somewhere between 8 and 10 would be ideal.
Yeah, and I'm about like I mean, who knows when kids come into the picture, but I'm like 10
Yeah.
to 12 I think right now is about
Yeah.
where I am. And I it's really hard to we have to remind ourselves that we are low volume, high ticket
That's
items.
right.
So we are not that like where we both started, which was like 40 weddings a year, like
Yeah.
territory, and adding on family portrait shoots and other events and things to
Yeah.
that 40 as well,
Hmm.
because our conversion rates are so different. Like we
Yeah.
don't want everyone walking in our door.
That's right.
We're welcoming to everybody, but we're being targeted in who our client is and who we're going to serve best.
Right.
And it like one wedding like is a tenth of your year or more.
Yeah.
So not getting a single wedding can make such a big difference. And there's been so many times in my career where I have had these 6 month or longer streaks
Yeah.
of
Or
not
longer.
booking anything.
Uh-huh.
And I remember during the pandemic, with so many reschedulings and things, that like my 2021 was like booked with all of my 2020 weddings that had to
Yeah.
get moved. And then I didn't like I finally at the end of 2020 in November I booked a wedding for 2021 that I think was my only I think I had one or two new weddings for
Yeah,
2021, and the rest
that's
were just
tough.
reschedules. And I
Hmm.
remember just like breaking down around Thanksgiving. And this couple are so sweet, and I'm still in touch with them. I loved them
Totally.
so much. And just like sobbing to my husband, that boyfriend at the time, being like, "Oh my God, like I booked something. It's been like a year since I booked
Yeah.
something new, and I thought I was never going to book something new
Yeah.
again." And I've been there again, even coming in like 2024 for anyone listening in. It's a
Yeah.
weird freaking year. It's an
It is.
election year. We
Hmm.
are in the engagement deficit. There are less people engaged and getting married. 2025 is already freaking booming, which, like, of course,
Yeah.
that's when, like, I want a children plan. And I'm like, yikes. I'm going to be coming to
Go
you for
right.
some advice soon on,
I got
on,
you. I can tell
on
you
that.
everything.
Thank you. And that's, I want to, like, I don't want to brush past that because that is a note. Like, our community is so supportive, and it
Oh
really, like,
yeah.
if you find your people, it is community over competition.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
And yeah, embrace that. If you don't have your people who are not just referring you business, because absolutely, like, that's a part of it too, but who
Hmm.
you can ask things, like, be like, "Hey, I have this weird NDA thing that's happening, or I
Yeah.
have this
I've
travel
reached out to
booking."
you about plenty of stuff.
And I have reached out. I think I've
Yeah.
reached out to you. I've reached out to, so, like, I've just, our community is amazing if you let
Yeah.
it be. And I
Yep.
think it's like letting that ego fall away,
Mhm.
and knowing that, like, we are never too whatever, too amazing to
Yeah.
humble ourselves and know that we all need some help sometimes.
Oh,
So I will definitely be knocking on your door to chat
yes.
mommy work-life balance, because
That's right.
that is right now I just have a fur baby, and it's way easier with Margot, my to I can, like, leave her with
Yeah.
my parents for a month. I don't
Yeah.
think I can do that
You're
with a
fine.
baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Parents are
um
not going to keep your kids for a month, unfortunately.
Mm-mm. No, I was like, because I'm booking for 2025, and I was like talking to my husband, and I was like, okay, well, if I, and like, as you know, like, babies don't come when you want them to, they come when
That's
they
right.
want
They sure
to.
don't.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, if I can give birth, then I can, like, 2 months later, I can be in, like, Aruba, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like,
Totally. You can do it.
uh-huh. Uh-huh. Just strap the baby onto your chest. It'll be fine. Just, like, hide it under your jumpsuit. No one will notice.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
honestly, if you were going to Aruba 2 months later, I'm telling you, you're going to run out the door. So
Which I
you'll
love,
be
even
looking forward to that.
when you said that, like, I have memories of my mom saying similar things when she went back to work, both with me and my
Yeah.
sister. And I think that that is what an amazing model you're setting for your two adorable boys of
Yeah.
what a working woman is like.
That's right.
And
And having a good
they're
partner. My husband is
yeah.
amazing. I could not do this if I didn't have a supportive partner. He is me. Like he steps in and I mean, and it's like weird to even say that because like he's not stepping in. That's his responsibility. Like too, like the same way that I do things, he does things, and we are a team. And
Yeah,
we
men
have
don't babysit the kids. Let's get this
yeah, men don't
straight.
babysit. That's just part of the deal. I have to take
Uh-huh.
care of them, and they do too.
Yeah, that one.
And
I
you
had a
have a great
stay-at-home
partner
dad,
in
so
Nick.
that one really gets on me. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
uh-uh.
No, no, it gets on me too. I can't. I mean, even my own parents will say stuff like, "Oh, Rob is such a hands-on dad," and I'm like, "We do the same things. Nobody ever tells me I'm a hands-on mom."
Oh, I'm gonna have to, like, find this and link it in the show notes. There's, like, the funniest video that I die on TikTok called "You're Such a Good Dad." Have you seen it?
Yes,
Yeah, that's gonna be, like, randomly linked to the bottom of our episode. It's so funny
need
for
to see
all.
this if you haven't.
Yeah, it's all of these and that, and she has another one called "Make a List" that my husband and I, oh boy, do we laugh at those videos, all about the, like, mental burden of being the woman in the relationship. But
Oh yeah,
as you said, that, like, you're maybe not the sole breadwinner for your relationship,
yeah,
but you're still an active participant in it, and
yeah,
that's a lot of burden. That, like, my husband's a documentary filmmaker, and I have been our breadwinner for a while he's been working on his
totally.
own projects, which, hopefully, like, knock on wood, I think he's on a meeting right now, like, hopefully, which I've stolen his mic, but
Yeah.
that's okay. But, like, hopefully he's gonna sell those, and they're gonna be amazing, and I'm
Oh,
so
I love
proud of
it.
him. But, like, I
Yeah.
have been our breadwinner for a while to let him like work on his own projects and things. And it's a lot of responsibility when
It
you're
is.
like, oh no, like those no's are piling up. And sometimes they're this like they're silly reasons. I just got like I don't always get feedback of like why I didn't book something, but I just
Yeah,
lost a wedding to another photographer who I admire very much. She's a good
sure.
friend
Yeah.
and wonderful. And I was like, oh, was there any feedback? And it was literally like, even like it wasn't about the money, but it that photographer lived closer and they were like, that just seemed nice to us that like to
Yeah.
not have someone traveling in from so far. Even though like it wasn't about the travel fee. So like
Right.
you never know
You
what
know.
those little things are and you can't control it, but it hits differently when you're only trying to book
Yeah.
10 versus 40. Like just think of the percentages on those conversions. And on that note too, like if you are booking, like as you said earlier, like of course everyone was saying yes to me. I was charging $5.
Right.
That if you are booking everything, like you should be booking a high percentage of whatever you're like doing a consult with and like getting on those phone and like, or Zoom, whatever it is, like I'm charming them. But if you're booking the majority of things just coming through your door into your inbox, like something's wrong. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be. You should be more expensive. You should be
Yeah.
making sure you're leaving room in your schedule for those exciting opportunities when
Yes.
come along. Well, I feel we have been chatting away. I'm definitely going to have you back for another
Yeah.
episode, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you so, so much for being with us here today, where everything will be linked to below, but for those just listening in, can you let us know where people can find you and find the Artistry Reset?
Absolutely. So you can come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm an Instagram person. I'm at Sacia Matthews, and I'm sure like everything will be linked, so you don't have to worry about spelling that. But at Sacia Matthews, my website is saciamatthews.com, and of course, feel free to reach out and email me. Let's chat. Let's see how we can work together this year. And I'm at hello@saciamatthews.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I will definitely be having you back because I've already taken
Yes,
well over an hour of your time.
I will come back anytime.
Amazing. Bye, everybody.
Bye.